Hello, hello, and welcome to the Unplug podcast. Today, we're going to be talking with a very special guest, Susan Kaiser Greenland. For those of you who do not know who she is, Susan is a pioneer in children's mindfulness. She's been doing this forever, and she actually wrote Mindful Kids, which is one of the New York Times bestseller books on children's mindfulness. Plus, she has been all over everything. She's on the Unplug meditation app. She's been all over television, and we just are so lucky to have her here with us today. And today we're actually going to be talking about her latest book, Real-World Enlightenment. Okay. In the chat, before we even start, I would love to hear from all of you. Where are you coming from? And also, are you interested in learning how easy it is to actually be enlightened? I think the first thing we want to know is what's the definition of enlightenment? And the second thing we want to know is how do we get there, right? So if you could just leave us a message in the chat where you're coming from, great. We love to hear that. Perfect. Okay. Jolena, say hello to everybody.
Hello, so happy to be here.
Amazing. Alaska, yes, ready to be enlightened. You're ready to be enlightened all the way in Alaska. I love that. Susan Kaiser Greenland, if we could remove the spotlight on me, share it with Susan and I. I'm so happy that you're here. I'm so excited to share you with everybody. And I have to say, I've been reading this amazing book. And for those of you who don't have this book, you have to get it. We'll be leaving the link on the chat. It is what's so brilliant about it is even if you don't have time to read the entire thing, every single chapter has takeaways and summations. So you really get the meat and the sound bites, which Susan is so brilliant for. Welcome, Susan.
Hi, Susie. Do you recognize this?
I do. The Betsy Carter famous mug from Unplug. I love it. I love it.
This is a mug Susie gave me maybe 10 years ago, maybe 9 years ago. I was going through a transitional period of my life. And she had, I don't know if you ended up selling these, but I know you had this one made for me because I said I was beginning again. So this is Susie's love for all of us and emphasis, kind of epitomized in this beautiful mug.
I do believe that mugs should have a message. This is mine.
I love that. That's fantastic.
It's always a good idea.
Yeah. But you know what Susie did that makes this mug especially special? I'm holding it awkwardly because when I drink it, I see the message. So I see begin again.
That's amazing.
That's that attention to detail that Susie has that is so brilliant.
I love that. Susan, we're so happy that you're here. And by the way, Tracy and Beth, I love that your cameras are on and we can see you. Hi, Liz. This is a community building event. Hi, Meg. We're just happy that you're here and we're excited to share all about enlightenment. I have to tell you, when I first opened up Unplug, I didn't know what the word enlightenment actually meant, but I knew that I wanted to get there. And I'm still not sure if I arrived. So I'm so happy that Susan's here. So one more time, I'm going to show you this book, Real-World Enlightenment. And we are speaking to just someone that I respect on so many levels. You're just a legend. You've taught so many people how to meditate. I love one of the first things that I'm just going to talk about is I was invited to Jennifer Grey's house from, the actress from Dirty Dancing. And she had Susan come to her house and she was teaching all of these top meditation teachers how, we were going to do meditations together. And I didn't know what I was doing at the time. And I remember Susan saying, is 45 minutes good for everybody? And everybody raised their hands and said yes. And she's like, great. And then we closed our eyes and she didn't speak for 45 minutes. I had never sat in stillness and silence for that amount of time at that point. And that was just a great introduction to meditation, even though Jennifer's dog was licking my face the whole thing. Okay, let's get straight into this book. The first page of this book has a great line. Enlightenment is a word that gets thrown around a lot. So let's demystify it. Can you please demystify the word enlightenment for us?
Absolutely. You know, I wrote this book because I wanted everybody to know that real world enlightenment, the kind of enlightenment that I'm talking about here, is not only available to everyone, but I bet everybody on this call has already experienced it. There is this classical version of enlightenment, which has 8 different stages, and it's about the uprooting of all of your greed, all of your aversion, all of your clinging. And that is something that people from around the world spend lifetimes attaining. There's also glimpses of enlightenment where just naturally those ego-driven poisons, as they're called, that idea of being very attached or very stuck on something or pushing something away or being kind of into Lulu land, those just fall away. And all of a sudden, you have this kind of aha or a light bulb moment where all of a sudden you feel like you're part of something much greater than yourself. So I bet you guys have felt this, like whether you're out in nature, if your parents, when your child is born, sometimes it's at very sad moments when when you're privileged enough to be at the deathbed of, someone that you love. At those moments, the ego just drops and you're left in this non-conceptual, that means without a lot of thinking space. It's kind of like a gap where you just feel the web of interconnection that we're all part of. And these things usually last like that. But once you've had a taste of that real world enlightenment, once you've had a taste of it, you know it's possible and you know it's there. And that's where this type of a practice can help you have those moments more often and extend them a little bit longer when they happen. So I don't know, does that answer your question, Susie?
Definitely. And what I love about this book too is that it shows you the ways to actually experience the practices for enlightenment. So we're gonna get into that for a second. But we have we have what we need to become enlightened, but it can be hard to recognize it.
Yeah.
Can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
Well, one of the things that Unplug does such a great job of is teaching these bite-sized meditations for busy people or offering meditation for busy people. And one of the things most busy people experience when they sit down on the cushion or on the chair or lie back in a sound bath. I was just recently at a sound bath and listening to people talk about how much was going on in their mind. So most people experience all of this chatter in their mind. And that chatter is what gets in the way, those heavy opinions, the lot of ruminating, the anxiety, that gets in the way of our being able to drop into this sense of attention, balance, playfulness, really, really important quality, and compassion that's within and around us all the time. So the key isn't to push those things away. The key is to develop strategies so that we can get out of our own way and touch into these qualities of enlightenment.
I like how you say in one of the takeaways under the take good care section, how might connecting with playfulness, attention, balance, and compassion help you feel safer and more welcome?
Well, safety is a big thing, right? So often we think we're upset about something for a particular reason, but when we do the inquiry, we realize, oh, I just didn't feel safe. And we know from our great friends, the psychologists and the neuroscientists, that when we don't feel safe, we go into a fight or flight response. And then all sorts of things happen. So what happens to try to reverse that fight or flight, that safety response, which narrows our bandwidth? One of the things we do is we start to make some inquiries like, what could be a little bit lighter here? How could we lighten up a little bit? That's how the playfulness works. Or what are we not paying attention to? Or what are we overly paying attention to? Because remember, we pay attention to what scares us. We are hardwired to pay attention to what scares us. And that's a good thing. If we're getting chased by a tiger in the woods, we want to be paying attention. Not so good when, our pasta is bubbling over on the stove and we're reacting as if we're in a life-threatening condition, situation. So by recognizing, oh, I'm overly paying attention to this irritation, let's expand and take in the good And that's where the attention comes. Then we're more balanced. The compassion is looking at all the good stuff, and the playfulness is bringing a sense of lightness and fun.
In your book, you talk about this one section, how when things go wrong, we have a tendency to
Yeah.
sit with it, replay the situation, ponder it. And your tip was actually to just let it go.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about why paying attention to what's going wrong is not great for enlightenment, and why what alternative you would suggest for other people to do in those moments when they're feeling not so great about things?
Well, we don't want to ignore what's going wrong. We have to pay attention to what's going wrong. And honestly, if our hand is in the middle of a flame, we want to pull it back really quickly. But we need to be able to prioritize these things. We need to be able to see them in perspective. That's where the balance comes in. But remember, we're wired to pay more attention to what scares us. That is part of our evolutionary wiring so that we survive to pass our genes on to the next generation. So we have to push back against that a little bit. And the research shows that we have to pay someplace between 5 and 10 times more attention on the good stuff to offset one of the bad stuff. Now, I don't know if those numbers are exactly accurate. I always am a little skeptical of that, but I am not at all skeptical of the fact that when I get scared or when I feel that feeling that my nervous system is starting to ratchet up, noticing it and then broadening my perspective to just soak up some good stuff. This good stuff may just be the breeze on my face. It may be the sun on my face. It may be a picture of my kids, my grown kids, something like that. But really to shift my attention to something that's good. And that just helps me have a broader perspective. And like I said, I'm not sweeping the bad stuff under the rug, but I will be in a far better headspace to be able to deal with what the real problem is if I have a broader perspective.
I love that. And I just want to acknowledge all of these amazing human beings. I don't know if you can see the full view, Susan, but
I can't. I can
we
see
have
some, but
we
not
have Josie
everybody.
Behedry here, who is probably the first person who introduced me to you.
Yes.
At John Thomas Dye, she had you as a guest speaker to all the moms there, and I think that was my first introduction to you, actually. So really
Yes.
excited to see your face here, and surprised and delighted, and just seeing everybody just that this is what this is about. It's about helping people live better lives, happier and healthier, bringing in experts to help them do that, like Susan, which is such a gift to have you here, and also connecting in community. So just seeing you and knowing that you're here makes me so happy. Thank you, everybody, for showing up live.
Can I reinforce that, Susie? One of the things that gets lost in meditation practice in busy lives and in this modern secular meditation practice is the importance of community. And community is just so important. We need to be surrounded by people who are on this journey with us and kind of see things the same way we do. So I really, really appreciate the community.
I love in your book when you talk about how you and your husband were lawyers and very busy, and then you found yourself on this trip and became seekers. Can you describe how you went from just busy lawyers living life, not thinking much about spirituality, to seekers who then just completely altered everything?
Well, it was certainly a, a long process, maybe a little longer than it should have been. But yeah, I was a busy lawyer. My husband's a writer, so he wasn't a lawyer, but he was in Hollywood. So it was like he might as well have been a lawyer as far as that kind of a headset. And we were on that career path, and we took some time off and we went to Asia, and we just saw a different way of being. And that, looking back, I mean, the crazy part of that story, and it's not one that I hope my grown kids ever do, is that we actually smuggled money into what was then Burma so that we could take a illegal Jeep tour around the country. So my husband had 300 single-dollar bills stuffed in his underpants as we walked by some guys with some machine guns. So we were that nuts. But it was because we were looking for something. and we didn't really know what we were looking for. But it goes back to this idea of real world enlightenment and these aha moment ideas that once we've tasted it, and I've tasted this, I'm one of the lucky ones. I've tasted it even as a child in the backseat of my parents' station wagon on 12-hour trips up to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. I would get a sense of a different sound. There was a different sense in the quiet in the middle of the night. And I really felt connected to this wide open space. And once you start connecting with that, then that's where the yearning comes in. That's where you just want it more and more and more. And that is actually what propels us to actually do the discipline that it takes to develop a practice.
You said this beautiful moment, this beautiful line that was an aha moment for me. Our true home is inside of us.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's the classical teaching in the Tibetan tradition, is that, and in many traditions, is that when we're looking for whatever we're seeking, whatever we're yearning for, when we're looking for it outside ourselves, it's going to be hard to find. You can find a little bit of it in community, but we know the troubles we can get into in relationship if we're not really settled within ourselves. So where we really find our true home, where we really are able to tap into those qualities of attention and balance and love and compassion and playfulness, that's inside us. And then we can bring that out into the world.
And the tools in this book are so easy. I'm just going to read one takeaway. So as you know, at the end of each chapter of this book, Real-World Enlightenment, which Jelena put into the chat, so you can check it out on Amazon, is test drive this practice in daily life. If something catches your eye, a plant, for instance, focus on a single bloom or leaf first, and then broaden your field of vision progressively to include neighboring leaves, the entire plant, and then all of your surroundings.
Yeah, well, that's a way of taking a classical meditation practice and applying it to real life where we don't need a lot of time sitting on the cushion. We start with a nice narrow focus. We gather our attention around that focus, and then we gradually expand. And we gradually expand the visual field, or we gradually expand the sensory field, so that we just sense everything around us. And that practice has a way of helping us kind of get settled back into the idea that we are not all solo actors here. We're not all like that little bud on the flower, that we are part of a wide web of interconnected, always changing, many parts and pieces universe. And that all of that is where we find the moments of enlightenment.
I just have to say, when I was reading the book, I had an aha enlightenment moment, and I'm pretty sure everybody who reads this will experience it for themselves. But mine was when I worked in fashion. I was very lucky. I was in the front row in fashion, watching fashion shows, and I was so paranoid and uncomfortable. I felt like I didn't look good enough. My shoes weren't good enough. I had all these feelings of just not being good enough inside of me. And I remember going home to my mother and her saying, nobody cares about you. They're too busy thinking about themselves to be focusing on you. So stop focusing on yourself. And that was such a gift. But in so many ways, that kind of epitomizes what meditation helps me with specifically, is not being about me, being about everyone else around me and everything around me, and really taking in the present moment and not having it be one where you're just kind of thinking about what is not great, but you're thinking about what is beautiful.
Yeah. And what's beautiful about that and what's tricky about that is that we also have to take good care of ourselves. So how do we do that? How do we allow our egos to drop and really focus on how can this be helpful, and not just helpful to me, but helpful to its helpfulness is contagious. These positive qualities are contagious. So how can they be helpful while still taking good care of ourselves, because we don't want people we need to have healthy boundaries in order to be able to continue to serve and continue to be helpful. So again, we go back to that's why you need the attention to be able to pay attention to things. You need the balance. We can't just be giving all the way because we'll deplete ourselves. And then the compassion, and the compassion, of course, includes us. And then the playfulness, which Susie, you do such a great job of embodying. I mean, that wonderful spirit of you have is just so playful and light, it's contagious.
Oh, well, I believe all of our ripples are contagious. We all can either bring the energy into the room or suck the energy out of the room. I've done both. I've brought it in, I've taken it out. But you just said something that made me realize, like, let's do a meditation on self-care. What I love about your meditation specifically and practices in here is that you have a lot of self-inquiring questions that we can just kind of ponder upon and notice what will pop up for us. So we can each have our own aha moment with you. How does that sound?
That sounds great. And I promise not to go 45 minutes without speaking this time, like I did that first time.
Please.
Okay, I'm going to take off my glasses here. And I'm going to structure this meditation since Susie just talked about the practice in the book where we focus in on a particular flower on a bush or on a piece of shrubbery, and then we expand our attention, our awareness to include the whole bush. Let's try that in more of a formal meditation practice, because it's important to remember that the formal meditation practice and the informal meditation practice, they really go hand in hand. I mean, sometimes people overemphasize the formal practice, and I think we've all met people who have spent, long time on meditation retreats, but they have a hard time bringing that out into the world. And then bringing this kind of attention, balance, compassion, and playfulness out into the world through informal practice is fantastic, and it is strengthened by the formal practice. So let's see if we can balance it together. And let's start with an inquiry around motivation. Classical practice always starts with an aspiration and a dedication. And the aspiration and dedication are usually somewhere around the idea of how or wanting to help all beings without exception, like absolutely everybody, not just people like us, but everybody. So the aspiration I do in my secular work before a practice or even before I teach is I just silently say to myself, may this be helpful. And so let's just close your eyes if you're comfortable, or look just straight ahead or look down and see if you can just take a second and consider your motivation. What actually brought you here today? Why did you come? And hold that meditation in mind. What is it that you're seeking? What are you yearning for? And let's just notice that before we begin. Now, I hope everybody is in a comfortable posture with their back relatively straight, comfortably straight, and their muscles as relaxed as possible. And I want you to imagine right now that you have a nice, soft, woolen knit cap. And you're taking that cap and you're going to bring it over the skull of your head. So see if you can feel yourself putting that cap on. You're bringing the cap over the skull of your head. It's moving down to your forehead and the back of your head. It's moving down to your ears and over your ears. So you're just bringing the soft beam of attention over your head, just as if you're putting on a nice soft cap. Now let's keep bringing that attention, that floodlight of attention down, and feel your face, feel your shoulders, feel your upper arms, your chest, your back, feel your lower arms, feel your hands and your fingers. I invite you to feel your belly now. The belly can kind of be a complicated place, so lightly just move your attention into your belly and now into your upper legs, into your knees, into your lower legs, into your ankles and your feet, and feel your feet against the floor if you're sitting. Bringing our attention to the sensations in the body is a little like what we did when we brought our attention just to the flower on a bush full of flowers. Now let's widen that spotlight of attention to what's happening around us. See if you can sense all of the different things that are going on in the room. Can you smell anything? What do you hear? Tune into what you hear. What are you feeling? Are you sitting on something hard or soft, warm or cool? Just soak in the sensory experience. We're just broadening that beam of attention to include not only our body, but the sensory experiences that our bodies are taking in. And now let's broaden that floodlight of attention even further. And let's really see if we can sense, can we feel the space around us? Can you feel the space behind your back? Can you feel the space in front of you? Really key into the sensation of space on either side of you. There's space above you. Can you sense that? There's space below you, below your seat. Can you sense that? There's space all around you. Can you sense that you are a body in space? And now let's just rest for just a minute in this wide open awareness. If thoughts and emotions are coming up, don't try to shove them away, but just let them be. If it's difficult to sit still, you can shift your weight a little bit. If big feelings are coming up, notice them. And then take a minute and see if you can soak in some good. Is there something you're grateful for? And I want to close with a dedication that my dear friend Ann Buck, who many of you here in Los Angeles may know, she's a wonderful friend and mentor, often closes practices with. This is, remember, we start with with an aspiration and we end with a dedication. Let's see if we can all make this wish to all of the people on this call. May you be happy and peaceful, knowing that things are just as they are. May we care about each other without needing to change anything, without needing to do anything, but just knowing that things are just as they are. May we find joy with each other. without needing to change, without needing to do, without needing to fix, but just knowing that things are just as they are. May we be happy and peaceful and know that things are just as they are. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. To borrow from the kids' work, let's wiggle our fingers and wiggle our toes to come back into the room. And then we're ready for anyone have any questions or any thoughts?
Just wow.
Mm.
Things are just as they are. And I love that we're all connected as a community and we're all here for each other. And it's nice to just spend time loving the people around you, like
Mm.
everybody on this call.
Yeah, without needing to change anything, without needing to fix anything, without needing to do anything.
What a gift. We have so many questions,
Okay.
but I want to prioritize the people who are here. So if you have any questions or would like to say any thoughts, feel free to either put it in the chat or actually raise your hand and you can speak. And if not, we'll just get straight into our list of questions that people sent in. Okay. So first question. What exactly is enlightenment and what is your best tip to get there?
My best tip to get there. Well, that is an excellent question. I think the enlightenment part we already answered together today. And the idea of getting there is we really need to try to get out of our own way. So my best tip for getting out of our own way is really a two-step process or a 1-2 punch. It's mindfulness first. We have wonderful awareness-based strategies that help us settle our nervous systems and ground ourselves. And we've talked about this already. We really can't get into a wider, more open, receptive headspace when our nervous systems are on high alert, right? Because what our bodies do is our bandwidth narrows so that our energy can move into our body to give us the strength to take care of ourselves, to fight, to flee, or to freeze. So we need these awareness-based strategies first. And so these are great grounding strategies that have now become quite common. And it's been a tremendous, tremendous benefit that mindfulness-based stress reduction strategies are right out there for everybody. That gets us so far. To get us to the second step, to that sense of enlightenment in every moment, in every day, what we really need to do is we need to intellectually understand and then internalize any of these universal themes that cut all across wisdom traditions. They are not just in Buddhism, they're in Christianity, they're in Islam, they're in Judaism, they're in Hinduism. These universal themes like kindness and compassion, but also themes like renunciation, skillfully letting go. Themes like open-mindedness, developing a comfort level with not knowing and a comfort level with being uncomfortable. So it's that 1-2 punch thing. We have to first learn to self-regulate and ground our nervous systems when we get overly excited and upset, and then start to view the world a little differently. And if you look at classical training, this is very consistent with the classical training sequence of view, meditation, and application.
What are your go-to tools for managing anxiety during big life transitions or changes, aging parents, cross-country relocations, job changes, high demanding career?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is really know yourself because everybody is different. I can tell you what my tools are, and my tools usually involve movement first because I'm just one of those people who's wired that it's very helpful for me to release nervous energy or stressful energy. Everybody isn't like that. Some people are better with the sedentary practices, some people are better visualizing. So what I encourage people to do is to take some time and see what resonates with you. Try any one of a number of different practices and what makes you feel better, and try it in different ways. Then once you do that, then you can go ahead and integrate that when you're in a high anxiety mode. Now, that said, if I had to choose one practice across the board, it would be appreciation. I think it's so easy to get stuck in ruminating about what's scaring us or the bad stuff. Doesn't mean it's not real, but we can get stuck in it, so stuck in it that we forget about all the good. So appreciation as a go-to practice is my number one, my number one anxiety management tool.
I love that. And I want to recommend an app that I found that I just am loving right now, and it's free. It's called High Note, and it makes really cool thank you notes. So if you are wanting to use appreciation as a practice, check out that app and send a thank you note to Susan afterwards. I'll thank you now, and I appreciate everything you're doing.
Well, I thank you for having me and for introducing me to this great community.
I love it. Okay. So, balancing parenthood and a high demanding career. I don't know if that's different than the last question, but any
Well,
thoughts on that?
I can come at it from a little different angle, just using different themes, because I do think it's helpful to start. We know, I think people generally know the awareness-based strategies for helping us settle our nervous system. So that's that first step. Remembering that movement is really important. They're not all about sitting still. The second step is really starting to better understand and then internalize these universal themes. So one of the universal themes for the, listen, I am a recovering workaholic. You know, crank and crash has been my way from as a lawyer, as a student, and even as a meditation teacher. So I understand this business of trying to balance these things. And one of the themes that I think we can really pay attention to here is under the kind of category of playfulness, the idea of relaxed, minimal effort. It's like the backwards law, the idea that sometimes the harder you work to get something done, the less effective you are. So what we really want to do is we want to find that sweet spot where we're doing enough, where we're exerting enough effort in a relaxed way, but not more than is actually needed. And that theme has really helped me recognize that it's okay to go with the flow a little bit more. It's okay to bring a more lightness and playfulness into what I'm doing, and I can still get the job done. So that would be my suggestion.
My favorite parenting quote is from a mom I really respect named Michelle O'Brien. And she said that a 90% is still an A.
Mhm. That's fantastic. That is fantastic. And
Josie
you know
knows.
what? If a 50% gets the job done, then that's an A too. And sometimes it can get the job done.
I love that. Okay, I love this question, by the way. Self-belief and trust are essential for taking actions that feel difficult. How would you mindfully coach someone to work with strong conditioned self-judgment and self-doubt?
I think in little tiny pieces over and over again. And this is another one of my great kind of go-to practices. When I am absolutely sure of something, and that being absolutely sure of something can be, I'm absolutely sure I messed this up, or I'm absolutely sure I'm not up to this task. First, the awareness-based grounding strategy, you know, I'll just sit and rest for a second, feel my feet, something like that to settle myself. And then try to think of 3 things that might actually make that statement or that belief untrue. And just that little tiny analytical practice after you do a grounding strategy so that you're out of the kind of twirling in your mind that happens when we're questioning and into a more settled, open, receptive state, then, you know, how might I be wrong about this? Because actually, we're wrong a lot of the time, and not just us, everybody. In fact, some people say everybody is wrong about everything because we can't ever know all the causes and conditions that lead up to every moment. So just being able to sit back and think, okay, this is how I feel. You know, Sony Rinpoche's great line, just because it feels real, and it does feel real, doesn't mean it's true. So you're acknowledging it. And then how might I be mistaken? What could be a little different? And that again opens things up. What happens with anxiety, guys, is that we get, and with any kind of strong opinion or belief, is it gets like this. We think it's solid. And these inquiries, what they do is they help loosen this up and think, oh, wow, maybe it's not exactly as solid as I thought. Maybe it's like absolutely everything else, made up of multiple parts and pieces that are always changing and interdependent, and that gives us some room to find a way in. So I hope that helps.
Great. Johnny, I see your hands up, and yeah, I'm prioritizing the hands up. Hi.
Hi there. Pleasure to be back here again. Grateful for this community, as you were mentioning earlier, through my friend Shannon Aljeo. And pleasure to be here speaking with you, Susan. I just had a quick question. So like I teach yoga and meditation and mindfulness as such already. But I come from the country. I come from a very like masculine dominant area, and I got a lot of peoples that otherwise are not gonna meet me in the studio or not gonna come and meditate in these, mindful spaces. So I'm creating an online group to bring in a lot of the men in my life, especially in a lot of men. We just not gonna talk about these things or find access to these mindful practices unless one of us is leading the charge for it. But most of these folks are coming in very green, like neon green.
So what's the
What
question for Susan?
Yeah, what tips or, insight would you share for helping folks fresh into the observations of these practices really begin to get their footing on the path?
Well, I love that you're doing that. I think that you're right. I think that people going into their own communities, whatever that community is, that's where the rubber meets the road. That's where we can have some traction. And starting with people who are resistant is actually my very favorite place to start. First, I would strong as somebody who spent years in classrooms working with kids who didn't want to be there, I would strongly encourage you to keep your sense of humor, because I imagine you'll need it. And that sense of humor and that lightness is important. As far as practical, there's two pieces. It's the same thing. First, the mindfulness-based calming strategies. And second is little tiny bits, is what my teacher Mingyur Rinpoche calls short times, many times. Not trying to do too much. Really at the beginning, start to build relationship. Once you build relationship, trust will be built. So having the people break down into dyads, into twos, and giving them a prompt, what do you think about mindfulness? Be very open to having people tell you they think it's a lot of baloney. And then use that as a way in, perhaps with a personal story. Yeah, I used to think that way too. And then this happened to me. Personal stories really resonate if you leave open the space for other people to tell you theirs. And if when they tell you a personal story that may not be exactly what you want to hear, your response is open and receptive. And then you can use that as a teachable moment. So just to kind of recap, first, the stress reduction, the awareness-based grounding practices, short time, many times, drop in frequently, we can always begin again. And then relationship, ways of talking to people to build the community so that then they see how you are actually navigating all of this a little differently. And that makes it interesting to them. Then they think, hey, I want some of that. So does that make sense?
Great question. Great answer.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. How to find joy after loss?
Tough one. Tough one. Sometimes people think when I talk about joy is within us all the time, joy is always around us, that means that we are going to be giddy and silly all of the time. And that hasn't been my experience. But what has been my experience, and the experience of centuries of meditators before me, is that when we tap into joy, when we're in a situation that's not emotionally charged, and we bring our awareness around that. Then, and we learn to do that repeatedly, and we learn to try to extend that time and really feel joy. Then when we're in a situation that is anything but joyful, then two things happen. One, we've tasted joy, so we know that it's possible, and that gives us a kind of hope that, all right, it may be just around the corner. And the other is that because we've tasted it and we're open to it, we're receptive to it, sometimes different joyful things come up. I mean, I remember so clearly the long drive up to bringing my father to after he passed away, to the cemetery from the lower peninsula of Michigan to the upper peninsula of Michigan. It's like a long drive. It's a whole line of cars. And we had so much fun on that drive in the strangest way, even though it was one of the saddest day or two of my life. So when you have experienced joy and cultivated it outside of these challenging situations, then you know it's possible when you're in one. And sometimes you can be a little more receptive to resting in it and feel a little less guilty about feeling the joyful moments, even when you're going through a tough time.
I saw that Karen raised her hand. I'm not sure which Karen, to ask a question. Are you still on? No? Okay. How to clear your mind of trivia in order to meditate.
All right, so that's a really great question, because remember, meditation is not about clearing our mind. And there's a great story that will tell us that. And that story comes from a social science experiment from a guy named Dan Wegman. And I want everybody right now to just close their eyes and try not to think about a white bear. You can think about anything else, whatever you want to think about. Don't try to get rid of thoughts. The only thing you cannot think about is a white bear. Okay, open your eyes. How many people thought of a white bear?
Put it in the chat. I'm curious. I'll have to admit, I definitely could not stop thinking about the white bear.
What are we seeing in the chat?
A polar bear, me too. Yep.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure everybody saw. the
Oh, white bear
was
drinking a Coke. I love that. There's the
That's so
little
funny.
emoji. Yeah. So that's it, right? When we try not to think, the more we try not to think about something, the more it comes up. It's what we resist persists, right? So we don't try to get rid of thoughts. What we do is we allow them and we create a lot of space for them, but we don't engage with them. So that's what happens. The first thought that comes up, when the thought first comes up, it's like there's a Buddhist teaching about two arrows. It's like the first arrow. There's nothing we can do about it. If we get shot with an arrow, we're shot with an arrow. But we don't have to shoot ourselves with a second one. So when the thought comes up, if we start thinking about the thought, analyzing the thought, I want to get rid of the thought. Oh, I hate that thought. Oh, I love that thought. That thought really reflects well on me. That thought reflects badly on me. That is where we start to get into trouble. So when we try to meditate, we just let it all come and go. And we remember that thoughts, like anything else, are made of all sorts of parts and pieces that are all dependent on one another and constantly changing. And we just create a lot of space. And then we move our attention to avoid getting caught in the loop of thinking. We move our attention to a neutral or pleasant experience. That can be the feeling of our feet on the ground. Anchor your attention on your breathing. You can imagine, you can visualize something in your head, like a safe space, a beautiful beach. You can repeat a word or a phrase over and over again. And those things anchor your attention away from the rumination, and that helps the rumination or all of the thinking settle down.
It would be so great to have that one thing in your pocket, like a rose, to think about when you're feeling that way.
Well,
There's
you can have that. You can
Yeah.
have that. You can, again, if you play around with which of these anchors are the most successful for you. Slogan practice, that's basically what it is. Phrases. If you play around with which ones actually do help ground me, which ones do broaden my perspective, then that can be your go-to.
Love it.
Yeah.
There's a very interesting question here, and I'm going to kind of make it applicable for both parents. A lot of parenting questions, since you are the parenting guru, even though you would never call yourself a guru. I can call you a guru, right? One of the questions is, when you're in the midst of losing it, frustration, you feel yourself about to boil over, what is the technique that you use to stop yourself in that moment of frustration and anger and flip the switch?
It depends on where I am. If I am at a place where I feel perfectly safe, I shake. And I don't mean like quiver. I mean, I just get the energy out of my body. I just start to move. Because what happens with me and with a lot of people is when you start getting angry like that, if you're trying to hold it in, it's this energy builds up. So I find movement very helpful. Often though, if I'm in a meeting or something, I cannot shake. Although I can certainly do it around the house with my family, with my kids. In those cases, my first goal is just to stop. I do everything I can not to react, not to say something at the time that I'm going to regret later. And sometimes that means I do have to voice this. I have to say something like, not feeling comfortable right now, give me a minute, or I'll get back to you on that, or something along those lines. So I let myself settle. And then I really try to give myself as much time as possible to start to come at this from a different perspective. Because again, the open-mindedness, the way of becoming comfortable with uncertainty, the way of looking at things from multiple perspectives, I may still come back feeling the same way I felt when I was angry and upset. I may still come back with the same intellectual idea, but it's not going to be as charged. So this again goes back to that two-step process. We need to develop mind awareness-based grounding strategies to help settle ourselves first before we can get to the point that we can expand our perspective by looking at multiple universal themes. And sometimes those awareness-based awareness is key. We are aware that we're starting to lose it. And so we can interrupt that pattern of starting to lose it by saying, hey, I don't feel comfortable right now. I'm going to take a break. Something as simple as that.
I also think practicing meditation every single day helps you kind of become a little bit more resilient in those moments. You're able to flip the switch faster. I found that works for myself and pretty much everybody who I know who is a daily meditator, a consistent daily meditator, is able to kind of flip their switch quicker.
Yeah,
We've
one
been
of the
getting a
ways,
lot.
oops,
Sorry.
sorry. One of the ways people talk about that from the real world enlightenment standpoint is where you really see progress is when people don't get stuck, or when they do get stuck, they don't stay stuck so often.
And again, I want to show this book to everyone.
Thank
There's so
you.
many brilliant practices in this book. There are so many, and it's just genius. In fact, Jelena, we need to make this mandatory reading for the Unplug Meditation Teacher Training Program, which is one of the next questions. Some people are asking, Susan, are you doing the Inner Kids Teacher Training Program? And some people are asking about when the next Unplug Meditation Teacher Training Program is.
I have through a web designer that Susie introduced me to years ago, we have completely revised the website, and on it there is the Inner Kids model. So as far as an actual Inner Kids training program, right now I'm not presenting one, but I do have everything you need to follow the model on the website. And it really is in these three books. The first book, The Mindful Child, the second one, Mindful Games, and the third one, Real-World Enlightenment. The reason I wanted to write this book is it is that third piece of the universal themes. If you're out there and you're already teaching kids, you might have already bumped up on how kids kind of get a little bored. Maybe you're getting a little bored. How much of this can we do that's really about self-regulation strategies? That's why these universal themes are very, very helpful.
And I want to mention too that Susan has a lot of meditations on the Unplug app that are from her Mindful Kids program, which is also, by the way, we do recommend your book on our teacher training program.
Ah,
Which is
thank you.
happening pretty soon, right? October.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So before we wrap it up, the whole point of this is to kind of connect with community. So if anybody would like to say something, it's so nice. I really appreciate seeing people's faces. I know we heard from Johnny. I see Tracy, who's one of our trained Unplugged meditation teachers, and she's on Insight Timer, has incredible meditations on there. I see Beth, Sarah, Liz, and then so many other people whose cameras are not on. But if you would like to just pop on and say a little something to Susan before we end our call. Beth, Purdy, I'm going to call on you. I don't know you, but
Hey, thank you so much for this. So helpful. And Susie, I've done many of these little sessions with you, and I learned a bunch and then put it into practice, and it's just made a big difference in the life, mind and around me. And talk about making things fun and joyful. Y'all do that. I really appreciate it.
thank you. I love that. Liz, I see your sunny face.
Just kind of echoing what, excuse me, what Beth said. I just appreciate this forum. It is really great to hear from different teachers and experts, and yeah, I really enjoyed the experiential part and sort of just disconnecting. I'm a little distracted because I'm working and Zooming at the same time.
Well, I think it's awesome that you're here. I just want to say that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and I love the opportunity to be able to join these. So I thank you for offering that.
Amazing. Sarah, do you want to say something? I see you there.
Hi, Susie.
Hi.
This was amazing. I'm kind of stuck at home and just thought I'd sign up. I've never done one of these before. So, Susan, it was really lovely hearing from you, and it was really fun. So thank you.
Yay. Josie.
Hello, two Susans. Lovely
Hi,
to see
Josie.
you both. I know Susan, it's long overdue. I know I was supposed to see you last month, and Susie, you know, I always follow your work, and obviously you have influenced me greatly, and the teachers I've also been able to put your work in front of. So it's lovely to think that your ripples are rippling out there in the world, which is wonderful. I wanted to just say something about joy. You know, my father died last month, and you know, and joy is my natural place to be. So it's been very difficult not feeling joy automatically there. But actually, this morning I decided to go on a joy journey. I'm like, what brings me joy? Let me go intentionally to find things that bring me joy. And that's why I was a little late for this, because I actually went out to a place that always brings me joy, out in nature. I went to a little place where I love the coffee, and just thought I'm going to seek out the things that bring me joy rather than, you know, sort of sitting and waiting for the joy to come to me. So those little joy glimmers are out there as well if you're feeling down. So lovely to see you both.
We might have to steal that title, Joy Journey, for the Unplug app. Maybe you'll teach that one, Josie.
Maybe.
You could do that. Tracy, I see Tracy Goldman.
Well, you always bring me joy, Susie, and everything that you suggest, all of these different things to log into, I just do them all because I'm a lifetime learner, and this was fabulous, as they all are. And it was so nice to meet you, Susan, and I'm definitely going to get your book. And I just so appreciate you, Susie, and like that you're just constantly giving. You're just constantly giving. I did your training like 4 years ago, and I'm still getting so much value from everything that you're offering. And I really appreciate you, and I appreciate this. And Susan, you had so much valuable wisdom and experience. And I do teach meditation, so every time I do a new one, I just learn a little extra piece that I bring in to my students. So yeah, just thank you. Thank you so much.
You're going to get so much from this book, I have to say, Tracy, and also Johnny, because you're both teachers. And Josie, I wonder how many teachers are actually on this. If you could let us know in the chat, I would love to
Yeah.
know. But there's just so many practices in here that are so good.
Right.
Lolita.
So Susan, thank you so much. Susie, thank you so much. The light bulb I had while I was sitting here is I have a leadership retreat. I lead a group of people. I head up operations for a group, and we have a leadership retreat coming up. And I was thinking about how to sneak some of these practices in that you mentioned, Susan. And at the same time, I ordered your card deck. And I think we're going to have a segment where we give each person a card to work on mindfulness in that leadership retreat. And so I try to sneak it in when I can. It's kind of like Johnny, like how to sneak it in with a skeptical group of people. But thank you so much. This has been beautiful. I appreciate it.
Well, Lolita and also Johnny and anyone else who's on this call, if you have a group of people that you're teaching and you want to give them a gift at the end of the session, contact Jelena at Unplug and we would be happy to donate a month free without them having to put a credit card or anything in to the Unplug meditation app so they can experience Susan Kaiser Greenland's meditations for free. And, not have to worry about it ever costing them anything or being upsold.
That's a great idea.
Again, I want to thank you, Susan. You were brilliant. I learned so much. People wonder why I do this. I do this because I'm selfish. And I want to learn all this stuff for myself. And I love sharing. I love sharing all the people that I know who are brilliant. And you are definitely one of them. Thank you
Wow.
so much for your beautiful book, Real-World Enlightenment. Please, if you have a moment, everyone, go on to Amazon or anything that's easy for you to purchase it. And I promise you will get to know yourself a lot better after reading it.
Well, thank you, Susie, and thank you for all you do. I mean, the ripple effect that you have had in the last 10 years is really, it's impossible to quantify. And you can tell from all the people who in their response just in this little chat, just how much of an effect you've had on bringing so much hope and joy to people. And that's huge. So thank you.
Thank you.